Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning at KIDO Talk Radio. Out to our friend Lars Larson, syndicated talk show host, man of the world, and the four-letter word the liberals just can't get enough of. Good morning, Lars.
Good morning, Kevin, man of the world, and of a pressure washer for most of this weekend. So you know what that's like. So
I just love that line on your show. The four-letter word for liberal. There you go, Lars. Yeah, I just.
Well, they like it.
Yes.
They like saying it all the time. But, Kevin, how did the weekend treat you?
Not bad. We had our Boise Music Festival, so we had we were working and such, but you just can't get away from this. And if you're Sarah Sanders, someone, Lars, that you're very familiar with, you can't even go to a restaurant.
No, and in fact, what you're hearing, and I want to translate this for people, Maxine Waters, who represents sort of the far left end of the political spectrum, which is where I think most of the Democrat Party is headed right now. They're not headed for something that's more reasonable at the other end. They apparently want to skew toward the Elizabeth Warren end of the party. I don't think this is going to end well, because Maxine Waters was suggesting this weekend political violence against people, that if you see somebody associated with a Trump cabinet, that you should form a group and go up and confront them in public and shout them out of whatever public place they go to. And we've already seen this happen with a couple of people, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the president's spokeswoman, Kristen Nielsen. And notice they're attacking women. I haven't seen them go after any men yet, but it's interesting in these days immediately following the advent of the Me Too movement to suggest that you scare people out of working for this president, that they can't beat him on policy, they can't beat him on arguments, logical arguments to say why we shouldn't do things like get rid of Obamacare, lower taxes, build a wall. So they plan to make it so personally uncomfortable for people in the Trump administration that they're forced to stop working for the president. Is that the tactic the Democrats really want to embrace?
It's shocking. It's a totalitarian state that you're harassed wherever you go. Never mind that if you're conservative, people go after your business interests and your family and such. And now we're seeing it, Lars, being taken to a different level that we've never seen before, like you said. And
it's a form of fascism, because fascists, I know that label is thrown at conservatives all the time. We're anything but fascists. What we want people to have individual choice. Fascists believe in the state comes first, the individual comes last. Well, in America, the Constitution says individual rights are actually superior to those of the entire community. The example I'd give you is that if somebody is convicted of murder and they are dead to rights guilty of a murder, our country actually says we have to let that person go if the government oversteps its bounds and violates the civil rights of that person. Now, is that best for the community? No, it's not. But what it's best for is individual rights, that we prize individual liberties to such an extent that we will put an individual's liberty ahead of convicting them of a heinous crime. So on top of all that, Kevin, let me point this out. There's a man he is the odds-on favorite, I guess I can say is the best way to describe it. He's the man likely to be the next president of Mexico. And he's suggesting taking out part of our country back from Mexico. And he's pushing people to go into the United States and establish their communities there. And it's effectively a soft takeover of the United States. And that's what he's proposing. And that's absolutely wrong. And yet, I don't think anybody heroed by that. And let me point out one other thing, Kevin, that you may or may not have talked about at the tail end of last week. There's a brand new Rasmussen poll out. Rasmussen is a pretty down-the-middle polling firm. They don't really tilt left or right like some of the polling firms do. Rasmussen asked people, who do you blame for this situation at the border where children are in some cases being separated from parents, just like we separate American children from their American citizen parents if their American citizen parents commit a crime. Happens in Boise, happens in Portland or Seattle. Well, what they asked was, who do you blame for this situation? 54% of all likely voters, so that's Democrats, Republicans, and independents, blamed the parents of those children for creating the situation. Among Republicans and conservatives, the number is, of course, much higher. But a solid majority of Americans, I think, properly assign the blame for this to the parents who insist on trying to cross into our country illegally and involving their children in committing a crime. Because for the adults, it's a crime. For the kids who are being brought, they have no choice of their own. Those kids are also subject to deportation, but they've not committed a crime unless they've previously crossed in. And I hope you took note that the little girl whose picture became the poster child for this whole question, she's seen crying in anguish on a still photo taken by a Pulitzer Prize winner and published by Getty Images. Time magazine put it on the cover of their magazine with her looking up, crying in anguish, and then photoshopped Donald Trump in looking down as though he doesn't give a damn what this little girl thinks. Well, here's the truth about that little girl. That little girl's mother ran away from her husband and 3 other children. He was not, by any account we can find, abusing her. He said, my wife wanted the American dream. She wants to have a better job with more money. So she crosses illegally. She had been previously deported in 2013. She brings her little girl with her. They were never separated. And yet that little girl's picture was used in Texas by a group that raises money to aid and abet these illegal alien families, raised $17 million last week by publicizing that photo and saying this is the photo that shows the anguish caused by separation of children and parents. This mother was never separated from her kid. She is, in fact, a felon because once you're deported once, if you cross back in a second time after deportation, that's considered a felony. And she left behind a comfortable home and family and abandoned her 3 kids at home. Her husband is a ship captain in Honduras. He makes good money. There are photos of her from her own social media that show her and the family in a nice-looking car. They lived in a nice house. There's no indication that they were suffering from any kind of political persecution. She just wanted to make more money.
Lars Larson joining us, LarsLarson.com, The Lars Larson Show, weeknight 6 to 9 right here at KIDO Talk Radio. And yet you have people going after the administration, Lars, calling them Nazis, targeting Trump supporters. And you wonder, this has been going on since Janet Reno and Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, and we never had this type of uprising that we're seeing in the liberal progressive media.
Except for one thing, Kevin. Make sure you point out, because people may not remember, Janet Reno went after American families, especially in Waco, Texas. There were people who died in that. Those are Americans. In the case of Bill Clinton, he sent Elian Gonzalez back to a Cuban dictator named Castro. And this little boy's mother died trying to get him into the country. If people don't remember the story, this mother and her son tried to get across the 90 miles between Cuba and Florida. And our policy was feet dry. If you could get your feet on the sand of South Florida, and it seems like a weird rule, but you have to draw a line somewhere, that if you get your feet to the beach in America, you're in. If they pick you up from the water, the Coast Guard or whomever, then you're not. And in that case, the Clinton administration handed that little boy off, raided the house where he was staying with relatives because his mother died in the attempt to get him to freedom, which we were inviting people. We said, if you can get to America and get your feet on dry soil, we will, onto the beach, even a little wet sand, we will let you stay in America. He sent that little boy back. And so you compare these policies, we now know that an awful lot of what the left and the mainstream media has their hair on fire about, and that is enforcement of the law, separation when necessary of children and parents, the parents being detained for committing a crime. The children have to be cared for, and we do care for them in the same way that the Boise police would care for a little boy or a little girl who was picked up at a crime scene. If mom and dad are going to jail and there's no one else to hand that child off to in the family, then they hand the child off to social services. So if you think that's evil, just remember it's happening in Boise. I don't think it's evil. I think it's sensible that if mom and dad go to jail, or if mom alone or dad alone goes to jail, and that there's no other place for the child to go, then you care for them. And we're doing exactly that. We are treating illegal alien children the same way we treat American citizen children. And yet the left is apoplectic. And what's really crazy is there was a report released last week about a new lawsuit that's been brought over alleged abuse of some of these children at a detention center in Virginia. The Associated Press, which has turned into a left-wing mouthpiece for Democrats, ran that story without mentioning all of these alleged abuses of children happen during the Obama administration, because the Obama administration had the same policy. It was a little more, it was enforced in a little more lackluster way than Trump has been enforcing it. But the fact is, if you think it's wrong for us to have a rule against coming into the United States illegally, by all means, call your congressman. I don't think the Idaho members of the Senate or House are going to vote for this. I don't think Raul Labrador would do it. So tell them you want to change the law. But in the meantime, until you decide to get rid of a law, if you believe it's a bad law, we should enforce the law. And, Kevin, the best way to get rid of a really bad law is to enforce it strictly. A good example of that would be if the Idaho legislature passed a law that said the speed limit on your interstate freeways in Idaho is 15 miles an hour. And people would say, well, that's ridiculous. And you say, well, we're going to have the law, but we're not going to enforce it. Do you know how to get rid of that law? Go out and start writing tickets to everybody who goes over 15 miles an hour on the interstate when going through Idaho, and you would have a public outcry saying, change this law right now. That's how you get rid of a bad law. I don't frankly think it's a bad law. I think we have bad people. And when I say bad people, people who say, I want to make a better paycheck, I'm going to do it by committing a crime. I'm going to bring my children with me while I commit that crime, and I'm going to enter the United States illegally. They have done that. It is on them, and the American people know it. So when you see these reporters on the cable television network saying, oh, the public is outraged, the public is outraged, but not against the administration. They're outraged against the parents who created this situation. And I've never once seen a reporter do a story where they said, hey, a bank got robbed in Idaho today, in Boise, and when they arrested the bank robber and his wife, who was his accomplice, they took the children and handed them off to social services. Do you think anybody would think that was outrageous if they did something like that? I think it's perfectly sensible. It's not a desirable situation, but the undesirable situation was created by mom and dad deciding to rob a bank.
Our great friend Lars Larson joins us tonight at 6, of course, all over the place. I have to ask you, Lars, you've been in Portland for years. How do you continue the conservative thought, the conservative opposition in a city that is, massively liberal? How do you do it?
Well, listen, I think it's actually a terrific place to do this. I mean, my wife goes nuts because she would much rather not be around so many liberals, because if she goes to the store, if she goes to the mall, she'll occasionally get people reacting to my name. If they realize that this is Lars Larson's wife, and they don't necessarily treat her kindly. A lot of conservatives do. In fact, last night I was at Costco because we had to go over to Costco and buy some toilet paper and paper towels and all the stuff you buy at Costco. And a Hispanic gentleman, walked up to me, and he had a very heavy accent. But he said, "Are you Lars Larson?" I said, "Yes, I am." I said, "What's your name?" He said, "Jose." And I said, "What do you do?" He says, "I drive a truck. I deliver gasoline." I said, "Well, everyone needs gasoline." He said, "I listen to your show all the time. I love your show." Now, that's sort of unusual, because I would be willing to bet the number of conservatives in my region is very low, as you suggest. The number of liberals is very high. But my opinion is not swayed by the people I'm with. And I'm one of those people who believes I wouldn't do what Peter did. Remember that Jesus told Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times. And I know there are people who do this. They get into a different crowd of people, and they realize that their point of view is unpopular, so they'll go with the flow. I don't go with the flow. I go with what I believe in. And if I'm with a group of people who are liberals, and they say, well, you're just, you have these crazy ideas, I said, great, let's talk about them. Which one do you think is the craziest? Well, you're in favor of the right to life. I said, I'll defend the right to life all day long. Well, you're in favor of enforcing our border policies. I'll defend that all day long. My point of view does not change because of the people around me. And I think people who do that have a real personal problem. You should either decide that you believe in something or you don't. And it's on a small scale, Kevin, this is what it's like. I have a lot of friends that I've made over the last 40 years living in this region. And if somebody comes up and says, I don't like Mike Crapo, I say, Crapo's a good guy. And they say, well, I don't like him. I say, it's okay. It's a free country. You can believe what you want. I'm not going to deny him. And I won't change my point of view just to accommodate people. If people want to talk about it, I will talk about political issues. And I'll talk about it politely and civilly, unlike the left, who are now suggesting that members of Donald Trump's cabinet should be attacked in public until they are afraid to serve this president. Conservatives should have a backbone. And if you don't have a backbone, then, become a liberal, because you'll be popular in some circles. But if you have a backbone, when you believe in something, you defend that belief. Now, you don't go out necessarily and shove your beliefs in somebody else's face unless they ask for it. If somebody walks up and says, I think a woman has a right to decide whether or not to be pregnant, say, well, so you believe in killing babies. Okay, let's talk about it. They say, well, it's not killing babies. I said, you ever had a friend who's pregnant and referred to her pregnancy as how's the fetus doing? These are issues that are sometimes, it's not tough to defend them for me. I think it's easy to defend what you actually believe in. I think what's sometimes tough is when people find themselves in a position where they are surrounded by liberals, and if the liberals want to talk politics, say, okay, you chose to talk about it, let's talk, and to stick up for your beliefs. And if you find that you don't believe in those things, good, change your point of view and do that. But for me, living in a liberal environment is good topic material almost every single day. People who want to kill jobs, and they'd rather have trees than people. They'd rather have animals than people. Me, I'm a people person. I believe in the people and the concerns of human beings and citizens in this country have to come first.
Lars, we always appreciate it. We'll catch you tonight at 6. And thank you again for joining us every Monday, sir.
Always a pleasure, Kevin, and always glad to get phone calls on the show from people in the Treasure Valley.
Have a great day, Lars.
Take care, sir.
All right, our great friend Lars Larson joining us here. Kevin Miller in the morning here. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Tom, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio. Tom? All right, let's reload. Coming up next, your thoughts on what Lars and I talked about, and is it time to come out of the conservative closet? I'll explain next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. To Tom in Nampa. Tom, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Oh, hi there, Kevin. Well, Lars Larson sounds pretty good. I did just about everything he said this morning. I've been around long enough to remember the days when Nixon was president and the anti-war rioters and everything and flag burners. And they used to say every time there was a flag burned, that was 10,000 more people who voted for Nixon. And I think maybe they ought to give Maxine a great big platform to spot off all her stuff all over the country. And that might be the best thing the Republicans got going for them. Because that old gal is really out to see. If you remember, I was not a real fond fan of Trump when I first moved here. But I've kind of gotten used to him. And I tell you, I think it takes somebody with his kind of brass to be able to go toe-to-toe with some of these people. I remember how Maxine Waters talked about George Bush. So it seemed like any person that doesn't fall right into their agenda, they're going to take a hatchet to them. And I just think it's disgusting. And I think it's going to come back to haunt them on Election Day. I think after Labor Day, the president ought to hit the stump. I think he ought to go right into enemy territory there in California and campaign for Cox for governor down there. And he might just win because I can see Maxine and her little bunch of left-wing idiots starting to riot down there. And people can say, wait a minute, we don't support this kind of stuff. And I just think it's deplorable that we can't have discourse in this country without resorting to the type of stuff she does. And like that Sarah Sanders, the way she was treated at that restaurant, this is deplorable. We shouldn't have it this way in America, and so anyway, I guess we got to pick and choose who we do business with now if we're going to run into that kind of stuff. So you're awful quiet. You still there?
I just like to listen, Tom.
Oh, well, I like to have you talk with me a little bit once in a while.
You're saying all the things I agree with. I can't really jump in there instead of going,
Well, I probably won't be calling for a few weeks. I got to go down to California, the land of lunacy, and take care of some issues I got with a rental down there. And, of course, part of the state I was from is Northern California in the Central Valley there around Redding. So it's a whole lot different than the coast and down there in La La Land, the Bay Area, the district that Maxine Waters represents in East Los Angeles County. So, like I say, I think the more she yaps her mouth off, the more people are going to, the Democrats are going to have a hard time taking back Congress. So Anyway, Kevin, you hold the fort down and keep on trucking.
Well, you get back here safe, Tom.
Yeah, thanks. Oh, I won't come back. I want to stay down there.
Well, thank you. Take care. Good to hear from Dom. Traffic and weather together at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave. And coming up next, John Decker will give us the latest from the White House. You're listening to Kevin Miller on 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Maggie. From your house to the White House, KIDO Talk Radio goes to Fox News Radio's John Decker. John, good morning.
Hey, good morning to you. How are you doing today?
Just trying to deal with the dining options in Western Virginia.
Well, you're referring to what happened over the weekend with Sarah Sanders, and obviously what happened to her is she was asked, as was her family, to leave a restaurant that she wished to dine at, and unfortunately, it's blown up, and you saw the president even weighing in on this on Twitter.
Oh, the president holding nothing back, saying they should worry about their dirty windows and all sorts of things. I say this to you every week, John. I'm sure when you talk to other people, we've never seen anything like this, have we?
I've never seen anything like it. The president weighing in on things that we never thought we'd see the president weigh in on. And so this obviously is something that is not going away for that restaurant, that's for sure. I don't know if the restaurant owner anticipated all of this would happen just because they asked Sarah Sanders to leave. But, in this day and age, I think that you have to contemplate those types of things.
Everybody has a platform. Everybody has an agenda. John Decker joining us now from the White House. John, let's talk a little bit about a ruling on the travel ban is expected this week.
Yeah, it didn't come down today, but it's expected this week. The Supreme Court has ended its term. It's not hearing any more cases for this particular year until the first Monday in October. And so the president put forward his executive order on immigration. His first week in office, it had to be modified, and that's what the Supreme Court will be ultimately ruling on. Two lower courts have ruled against the administration. The administration appealed all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and so 18 months after the president first issued that executive order, the Supreme Court will have their say as to whether or not the president's action was constitutional.
What was it like last week covering the White House every day with the whole policy concerning the kids being separated from their parents? And were you surprised that the president eventually did issue an executive order? Were people surprised on that?
Was I surprised that the president reversed himself?
Yes, sir.
To a certain extent, I was. The president rarely admits to mistakes, rarely reverses himself. But I think that, let's face it, he was facing a lot of rebellion from members of his own party on this issue. You had religious leaders weighing in on this. You had the president's own family weighing in on this as well. So, with all of that, I think the pressure got a little bit too much for the president, and that's the reason why he signed that executive order.
And, of course, we're continuing to deal with that fallout this week and next week, and it'll continue on through the summer. I thought of you this morning. I said, I'm sure I already know the answer to this. White House press room packed as always?
Well, yeah, and we expect a briefing sometime today. The timing hasn't been announced just yet. But we do expect a briefing today. We haven't had a briefing in the White House since last Monday. That's when Kirstjen Nielsen came into the briefing room at around 5 in the afternoon Eastern Time. And so we do expect a briefing with Sarah Sanders sometime this afternoon. And she'll, there's a lot that's happened since last Monday. So I'm sure she'll get a few questions about the immigration issue and maybe even some questions about her experience over the weekend at that restaurant.
John Decker, anything else we should be looking out for this week?
Well, the president's hitting the road tonight. After hitting the road over the weekend on Saturday, he went to Las Vegas campaigning for Dean Heller, who's up for a tough re-election race in Nevada, and the president heading to South Carolina to campaign for Governor McMaster, who is also in a tough re-election race. But the president staying loyal to McMaster, one of the first statewide officials in the whole country to endorse President Trump when he announced his run for president, and McMaster is having a tough time in his primary, so that's why the president's heading down to South Carolina to rally the troops, to rally the Republican base to support McMaster in that Republican primary.
John, thank you very much. You have a great week, sir.
You too, Kevin. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Our great friend John Decker to Liberty Linda at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Liberty Linda.
Yes, good morning, Kevin. You know, I was wondering if you interviewed Tommy Alquist soon, that perhaps you could ask him if he may run for president someday. What do you think?
Well, I know Dr. Alquist during the campaign did listen to this program, and I understand that sometimes after the you're off the trail, you either get addicted to the process or you move on. It would be nice to have him in. We've reached out to Congressman Labrador, and we're going to reach out to the lieutenant governor. And as we had Steve Yates on, we're going to reach out to all these folks because the race isn't over. But I'd be fascinated to see what a lot of these folks are going to do. Now, why would you say the presidency? Expand on that one, Liberty Linda.
I have a feeling that he may run for the presidency. And I think he would be a great president. So I just thought perhaps if you talk to him, you know, you might give us some insight into that if he may run. Or, like you said, all of the others here from Idaho, which are all wonderful people, you know, if they may run, you know, after Trump steps down. Anyway, I think it's an interesting question, and it would be nice to hear from him.
I'm with you, but, you know, you've got to, first of all, you got to win at the state level, right?
Well,
here I am giving you a hard time. Usually I just go, yep, that's a good idea, but I don't know if it was, you know, too much sugar with the Pepsi over the weekend at the Boise Music Festival. I'm a little feisty today. When we take a look at bringing the president here, what do you think of that? That's our next goal.
I think that would be a wonderful idea. But we need to know ahead of time. Hope it's not a surprise visit that we know ahead of time.
Well, you heard John Decker. He can go to Nevada, and I'm sure he's going to go to Montana. You know what's the fascinating thing is, and I was just hearing this where John Decker was talking about the president going to South Carolina to campaign in a primary, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there had been a lot of rumors that the president was going to come here and politic in our primary. But that didn't happen.
Well, if he does, we need to talk about our debate parties and how many people showed up and how many people loved him here. And I think that would be something good to talk to him about. But Kevin, I'm going to call into your show soon and reveal the answers to one of the mysteries of our world.
Well, wait a minute. I'm not George Norrie here.
Right, but we haven't gone on the George Norrie show, so why not do it on a Kevin Miller show? Reveal one of the greatest questions our world has had since the beginning of time. And
how's that going to
I'll call
work?
in and I'll reveal the answer to a great mystery. It'll be heard first on the Kevin Miller Show.
Well, gosh knows we need some exclusives. That'd be great.
Okay. Well, perhaps tomorrow morning I'll do that.
All right, Liberty Linda. You know, the 6 o'clock hour is always the time we build for the exclusives.
Okay. All right. Exclusive number one for the whole world, Kevin.
All right, Liberty Linda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Liberty Linda going to break some news. So you're at a restaurant, hanging out, having a good time, minding your own business. And at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, somebody comes up to you because you're wearing a Make America Great hat or a T-shirt or something of that nature. And we're seeing this across the country. This is happening to elected and appointed government officials. They're getting attacked. Sarah Sanders, the White House press secretary, she went to a place over the weekend in Virginia, and she was refused service. That's right, refused service. They said, we don't want you here. Get out. So she left. She let everybody know, the restaurant, and the president has weighed in. Others have weighed in. And you wonder, is this where we're going? You have Maxine Waters saying the president should be impeached and that Trump supporters should be harassed wherever they go. Is this America? At least in the past, the left was subtle with their censorship. The left was subtle with their attacks. Now, today, as I've said, they're seeking to drive people away who disagree with them, who support the lawfully elected president. And I always love it when people say, I'm going to bail out of politics. I'm going to bail out of everything else. Well, you're taking the easy way out. That's what they want you to do. And it's what? Like a totalitarian state. You say one thing, groupthink, or not, or you're driven away. That's not America. At 580-5436, 580-KIDO. The President of the United States has a point when he calls out the fake news media. But imagine if an elected Congresswoman, Maxine Waters, gets her way. Wherever you go, you're going to be harassed. Well, I just don't want to be involved in politics. Well, if you're a liberal loon, you can say whatever you want. If you're a conservative that loves America, apparently you can't. And we've seen that with the Department of Homeland Security Secretary. We've seen that with the Attorney General in Florida. We've seen that now with the White House Press Secretary, all attacking women and saying we need to drive them away. Why is that? I always thought that the libs, they were all about equal rights. They were all about the Me Too movement. Oh, that's right. Harvey Weinstein was a big Democratic donor. But at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, this is the type of world we're living in. We'll probably get some pushback for coming out and saying, we want the president here. We'd like the president to come in and fill up the entire stadium at Boise State. Could you imagine President Trump on the blue? Could you imagine President Trump in Idaho, the reddest of the red? By the way, Chris, thank you for that. One factor that people have left out of the story, and Chris emails me on Facebook, that Sarah Sanders, even though she was given the boot and left, this is what a class act she is, still offered to pay for the meal. How many people would do that? I don't think I would. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
So you're going to add your name to those ranks? Do you think she should step aside?
Oh, absolutely. She should step aside. You know, I have no sympathy for these people that are in this administration who, know it's wrong what they're doing on so many fronts, but they tend to not want to confront this president or even leave, but they know what they're doing is wrong. And I want to tell you, for these members of his cabinet who remain and try to defend him, they're not going to be able to go to a restaurant. They're not going to be able to stop at a gas station. They're not going to be able to shop at a department store. The people are going to turn on them. They're going to protest. They're going to absolutely harass them until they decide that they're going to tell the president, no, I can't hang with you. This is wrong. This is unconscionable. We can't keep doing this to children.
There you have it. Maxine Waters urging folks to attack, to go after people in the administration, to harass them. What type of world are we living in when we have an elected official, an elected and reelected ad nauseum congresswoman? She's been reelected so many times at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, that she's advocating that people get harassed. Now, as we said over the weekend, Sarah Sanders at a restaurant, minding her own business, and this is the new strategy of the left. Get out. Now, I don't know how it works that a baker or anyone else can refuse service and we take them to court, but you go to a restaurant and all of a sudden, no, you're not allowed to be in the restaurant because you work for the President of the United States. That just doesn't seem it. And then you had people saying that, well, Sarah Sanders lies, so she shouldn't be allowed to go to these restaurants. It's crazy how much they've lost their mind. Now, KIDO Talk Radio is your proud home of the Glenn Beck program. Glenn got ambushed over the weekend. You can catch him right after our show here. We're going to share that with you next. First, traffic and weather together at KIDO Talk Radio.
More self-reflective. I do have to ask you, there's this new headline on the Daily Beast saying that your company's in trouble, that you were trying to find a buyer. Is this related to the point about people not talking to each other? That if you want to create that media company, there's not interest? What's going on with that?
Wow. Brian, thanks a lot. I think that's the most ridiculous question I've ever heard. I'm sitting here ready to talk to you about the detaining of children and parents and trying to break families apart, something that has been happening with Janet Reno. That's why it went to the Supreme Court in the first place. With Janet Reno, it's been happening. We want to stop it, and you want to play those games? Have a nice day.
What game did I just play? So the question on the Daily Beast website, the headline says, Glenn Beck's media empire is imploding again. That's the headline on the Daily Beast. It is well known that Glenn has been trying to sell the Blaze. There was talk about a deal with the Daily Wire. According to the Daily Beast, that fell through. You can read the full story on the Beast website. Frankly, I thought Glenn deserved a chance to address those reports. I hope he'll come back and talk about it.
Well, that's how it usually is when you go with the liberal progressive media. They have a point. Glenn Beck is there. And they've done this to many people. It's like the Jerry Springer show. By the way, the Jerry Springer show ending, they put you there under false pretenses. Hey, we're going to have you come on and talk about these kids. Oh, wait a minute. No, we're not going to have you talk about the children's. We're going to have you talk about your business. Now, again, Glenn's a big boy, but I can't wait to hear what he has to say about this. And you can catch the Glenn Beck show in its entirety coming up today at 9, followed by Dave Ramsey, Sean Hannity, and Lars Larson. That's going to be huge. That's going to be huge today as Glenn will give his side of the story. Coming up tomorrow, a very special program as we get ready for God and Country. If you're familiar with God and Country, 52 years, it's been in Nampa, Idaho. It was started by Chuck Connors, the rifleman. And he saw what was going on. Remember, 50 years ago in America, 52 years ago in America, 1966, you talk about turmoil. It's not getting, I got a lot of, nasty messages on social media. You had people rioting in Watson, wherever. So Chuck Connors decided, I'm going to do an event that tells people what we're for America, for God, and for country. And the first one was here in Nampa, Idaho, has been here for 52 straight years. There is going to be an incredible amount of people there. You've got Unspoken, you've got Nick Vujicic, you've got Maddie Zom from American Idol. Gates open at 4. We're going to be there in the bright blue, I don't know if you'd call it royal blue, KIDO Talk Radio tent, but we will be there when gates open. It is a free event, family friendly. And at the end of the night, there is no dispute in this. It is the Treasure Valley's largest, in honor of my off-the-air conversation with Ray Amaya about fireworks today, legal fireworks display. And you're going to go, well, Kevin, I'm going to be outside the amphitheater. Maybe I'm in the Walmart parking lot. Maybe I'm even on the hill. You know the hill over by Garrity, Crunch Fitness, all those folks over there. That's how big the crowds are. How can I listen to the music? Well, let your heart not be troubled, to quote Sean Hannity. We will have the soundtrack to God and Country right here, beginning when it happens on KIDO Talk Radio. We're fired up, ready to go. We are all set with that, and we can't wait to hear and see the fireworks. I want to thank everybody involved with God and Country. We've been there several years. This is the first time that we have been their radio partner. We hope that this is the beginning of a lasting relationship, and it's a privilege to wear the mantle of the God and Country station here in the Treasure Valley this year and hopefully for many more years to come. More details on KIDOTalkRadio.com. And speaking of which, we've done an article asking for a presidential visit. He's been floating around this area. Why not come to Idaho? Why not come to the gem state, Mr. President? The reddest of the red. Right? Thank you all for listening. Really appreciate it. Ray Amaya, great job as always. And to everyone, may God bless you and your family. Keep the faith.